I feel like love triangles have been around since forever, basically. The most popular one I could think of right now being like Twilight, because obviously the whole Team Jacob and Team Edward marketing strategy, I guess, worked very well. But why do some love triangles work and others just really don't? And what if a love triangle wasn't about choosing two people, but about loving them both in completely different ways? I've been thinking about this ever since I closed the last page of the Infernal Devices book series. Because unlike most love triangles, this book doesn't ask you to pick a side, and it actually asks you to just sit with the loyalty, love, grief, and timing that these characters have to deal with. So in this video, I just want to dive a little bit deeper into the love triangle trope, and I kind of want to explore what makes particular love triangles so powerful and how they compare to most, I would say, love triangles that are popular, and why love triangles, even if people don't perceive them as a great love story, I guess, why they still leave such a lasting impact on me at least, and I think a lot of other people, and especially readers, I guess. So I've just listed some common tropes that, in my opinion, just don't really work that well, and I feel like that's usually the reason why people don't love love triangles as much as maybe they could. So the first one being that usually it's just so obvious who is gonna be the main love interest. Because I feel like in most love triangles, we already have an established couple, and then there's just this other guy thrown in there to just give it maybe some more tension. But that just ends up making it feel so forced because we know the second love interest is just there for the drama. And it's obvious from the beginning which one the main character is going to end up with. The next point, I feel like it could be a little bit more split between how people view it because it really annoys me. But I know that some people, I guess, kind of enjoy that, especially if you read books that are very popular right now. And that's just the two men fighting over a girl. Like I said, usually it's just about the drama with this trope. And I feel like a very big selling point is often that there's gonna be this like tension between the two guys where they just dramatically stare at each other and tell each other that you can't have her. No, you can't have her. And I personally don't really care about that at all, so it just doesn't really work for me. But I do know that there are some people that enjoy watching that. Especially, like I said before, I feel like right now it's very popular in books that the male love interest is also kind of more on the aggressive side. And I've talked about this in a video I made before about the mating bond. Usually, the men in popular books right now are often very emotional people, I guess, because anytime another man looks at their woman in a wrong way, they just get so angry and they just have to show everyone that this is their woman and that no one else can have her. I swear, it just feels like they are fighting over a toy. I don't know. But another point, and I feel like this really doesn't get enough attention, a lot, usually I would say most of the time, the female main character is caught in a moral dilemma which ends up with her cheating. Like, I would say most of the time. I can't really remember any story where there's a love triangle and the girl, because it's usually one girl and two guys that fawn over her, usually the girl ends up making out with both of these men, even though she's supposedly in a relationship with one of them. But it's really never addressed as cheating because I feel like that would paint the main character in a bad light, and usually authors don't want that. They want the female main character to be just this perfect, beautiful, lovely angel that all these men fight about. And so it just never gets called out or addressed. And I just think that's very unhealthy behavior. Then, of course, there's the very obvious point, which is that it's usually just a marketing strategy to make fans feel more involved in the book or movie or series, because it's just so fun to pick a side and be like, oh no, I am actually Team Jacob. No, I am actually Team Edward. Or I'm a Delana girly, I'm a Stelana girly, you know? And often a love triangle is just a tool to just generate more of a fan based debate. And it's not really there to give us like a deeper narrative into the story. And because of those points, most of the time, I personally feel like often it diminishes the relationship that it's supposed to dramatize, I guess, because this whole drama and how the main characters aren't able to communicate to each other about all this toxicity and, like I said, often involving cheating, it just makes it seem like there's no real mutual respect or care between the two love interests, and that just irks me a lot. So, of course, I feel like this is a point that a lot of people have made already, is that usually most love triangles aren't actually a triangle, because a triangle is one line that goes through three different points. And most love triangles are usually one girl and then two guys who want to be with her. So it's not a triangle, it's basically an arrow. But the funny thing is, if you think about it, almost every romantic story is a triangle in some type of way. So we talked about this in one of my uni classes, that even if there's no team A or team B situation, there's almost always, usually always, a third element in a story to just make the story more interesting, to just have someone or something standing in between the main couple. And it could be, like I said, just two men fighting over the girl, but a lot of the time it could also just be like an ex, a friend, a rival, or even a lot of the times a parent who disapproves, because that's still a third element that's stopping the relationship from working out. So, in a way, the triangle is less about two people competing for love and more about the idea that in most stories, love rarely just happens as a beautiful story between two people, because there's always something else in the way. And it's just the tension that comes from outside influences. So basically, there's an obstacle why the couple can't be together. So I feel like in the times that a love triangle isn't just used to make fan wars, I guess, it can actually be used in a smart way. So, for example, in the Hunger Games, the love triangle clearly represents the emotion Katniss feels about the life path that she has to choose. So she has to make a decision about where her life is going. And this is clearly represented in the two love interests, I guess, in this book. I would even go as far as saying the Vampire Diaries is still a little more complex than Twilight, for example, because Damon and Stefan aren't just rivals, they are brothers. And so there's a lot more emotional weight there, and you can just tell that they are struggling with whether they want to be with the girl they love or try to work things out as siblings. But even in that triangle, it's still very much centered around who will Elena choose and not as much on the emotional cost on all the three people involved. Another newer love triangle that's not a book actually, although no, I don't think it's based on a book, is the movie Challengers. And I actually personally haven't seen it yet, but still, even I can tell that it just explores the trope, I guess, in a different way, because it's still a love triangle that is very much toxic and unhealthy. But I feel like that's the point, because as far as I can tell, it very much just explores in depth the toxicity of these relationships and dives deeper into what is driving these characters and why they do what they do without apologizing it. Unlike many YA love triangles, it doesn't pretend it's perfect, and it's just very much about power and control. Okay, I took a short break to make a matcha because I was thirsty. But I'm back. Okay, so now that we have talked a little bit about some love triangles that might actually work, but still, like, even in the Hunger Games, in my opinion, it got very annoying to me that at some point the marketing really was just about the love triangle, even though it's the smallest part of the movies and books, obviously. And it just annoyed me so much that at some point, most like advertisement and posters were just talking about who will she choose, Gail or Peter. And I'm like, it's obviously who she's gonna choose. What do you mean? So, like I said, now that we've talked about different love triangles where it maybe worked a little bit and maybe didn't work at all, let's talk about, in my opinion, the only love triangle so far that I have read about that actually worked for me. So, since I know that this isn't a popular series, like nothing compared to Hunger Games or Twilight, I'm pretty sure not everyone has heard of this book series before. But a book series that you might have heard of before is the Shadowhunter Mortal Instruments City of Bones book series. So maybe you know Clary and Jace. And in that book series, we actually also have a love triangle that very much is random and kind of useless in my opinion. So if you do know the book series or maybe the film or maybe the TV show, because there is actually a lot there, the author for these books has written another book series called The Infernal Devices. And this is, in my opinion, the only love triangle that actually works. And I'm gonna tell you why. So the love triangle is happening between the main character, her name is Tessa, and then we have Will and Jem, the two love interests. Now what you have to know is that Will and Jem actually knew each other before they even knew Tessa. So this is already very different than most love triangles, because usually the only connection that the two guy love interests have, I guess, is usually the girl. And in that case, Will and Jem knew each other before they knew the girl, and you wouldn't really say they were brothers, but in this universe, in the books, there is something called parabatai, and this means they are basically brothers in everything but blood. So they literally have this very special bond with each other that nothing can come in between. At least that's how it's described in the books. One could say it's like a mating bond, but in a soulmate type of way and not in a relationship type of way. So Will and Jem were already everything to each other before Tessa was even in the picture. And then Tessa arrives and really connects with both of them in very different ways. So it's not like in other books where usually the girl meets one guy and I guess falls in love with him, and then she meets the other guy and that's like the whole drama. Oh my god. Oh my gosh, I just realized I have matcha all over my fingers. This is a great video, honestly. So in this book series, Will is the one that meets Tessa first, but I'm pretty sure actually Jem is the person that she connects with first, because they both talk about losing their parents, I'm pretty sure. And Jem is just like a fucking angel playing violin for her. And not in a Tamlin kind of way, okay? And then her and Will actually bond a little later. Mostly, I'm pretty sure, about their love for books. But bottom line is that the triangle isn't formed out of competition of these two guys at all between each other, but rather it really slowly forms over time through real emotion and connection. So this isn't just like the usual two hot guys and one confused girl kind of situation, because Will and Jem actually love each other so deeply that this random girl coming into the picture is really not the focus for them, especially at the beginning. And there's never this like, she's mine, no, she's mine situation, because there's just respect and sacrifice and just like this unspoken pain between both of them, because neither Jem or Will really know what to do in this situation, as they both love each other, but then they also love this girl and don't really know what to do about it. And Tessa, so our main character, very much actively thinks about her choice and how it might hurt their relationship. And it's actually so funny. I don't really fully remember everything in the books, but I think there was like a scene where Jem and Tessa were fighting some people or something, and then the others come and help them. And Tessa is just over there like, oh my gosh, Will, Jem, what is going on? And both guys are just with each other, and Will is like, are you okay, my brother? Like, move away, random girl I just met. I don't care about you. I need to know if my brother's alright. And she's just over there like, oh damn, okay. I thought I was like the main character, but I don't know. And it's just so funny. And at some point, Will has to choose between staying with Jem or leaving for Tessa. And he actually has a mental breakdown about it. Like, he is so overwhelmed. And at first, he stays with Jem, only until he tells Will to just like shut up and go help both our girlfriend. And when it gets to the point that they both realize their feelings for Tessa, they just care so much about each other that they would definitely give up the girl they love if it meant the other one could be happy. And it's just so rare to see a love triangle where everyone loves each other. This is what I was talking about with the triangle and the arrow before. So in this version, I guess you wouldn't say it's a full triangle because the guys are not romantically involved with each other. But still, basically, their love is even deeper than the one for the girl because they really view each other as soulmates. Even if it's not in a romantic way, but in a platonic way, they are soulmates to each other and they would do anything for the other person. Now, this is a spoiler warning if you haven't read the books, which is very possible because it's not that big of a book series. So I am gonna be talking about the ending now because I feel like it's a very vital part in the love triangle. Because in this book, and this is honestly so insane but also so creative, Tessa actually ends up with both of them, but not in a polyamorous relationship type. So let me explain. So towards the end of the book, Tessa has actually chosen to be with Will because her and Will just bond in a little bit of a different way than she did with Jem, and so she just feels like it's the right decision to be with him. And also, like I said, really spoiler. If you don't want to know more, please leave because it's honestly just a big spoiler. Jem dies. And so then she's like, well, I guess I only have one more option, so I'm gonna go with that one. But then the big twist is they actually find out that he didn't really die, and instead he got turned into an immortal being because this is a fantasy book, but they can't really do much about it and they can't really see him. So Tessa and Will just end up living their life together. And I also forgot to mention Tessa is immortal as well. So she just lives her life with Will until he's grown old. I think they have children together. And then he dies of old age, having lived a beautiful, fulfilled life with his girlfriend, wife, whatever they end up being. And then he dies because he's human. And so after, I don't know, 100 years or something has passed, Tessa actually meets Jem again because, like I said, he's also mortal, so he's also still alive 100 years later. And then they actually end up getting together and live out the rest of their lives together. So some readers might find this ending very weird. But honestly, I feel like it reflects real life truth because people can have more than just one great love. I'm a firm believer that there's not just like this one true love. And if you've loved a person but love someone else after, that doesn't diminish what you felt about them. So I think it's actually a very nice way to have her end up with both of them, because I was sweating while I was reading this because at some point I was like, shit, I don't know who I want her to be with. So yeah, I was struggling, and I'm very glad that she actually ended up with both of them. And Jem's choice is very complex because he didn't wait for her this whole time. He was going through his own stuff. And I don't know, maybe it feels sad because he's kind of like the second choice. But I think it's more of like a gift to him that he gets to have this time with her in the end. And that resolution is just bittersweet. Not perfect, but like emotionally honest, I would say. So overall, like I said, I just really like this love triangle because it just really focuses on the friendship and just loyalty and also just grief, because they are struggling so hard in this relationship. And these are just themes that make the triangle work for me. Like, these men aren't enemies to each other and are trying to get to the girl first, basically. They are very much like soul bound. And I don't think Tessa manipulates or cheats. At least I don't really remember. And she genuinely just struggles with the deep love she has for both of them. And like I said, it just hurts, but it's also beautiful. Like, I gotta be honest, I cried at the epilogue. So I think the Infernal Devices isn't really about choosing two boys, but it's about how hard it is to love people when time, fate, and illnesses get in the way. So there's no like winner in this triangle. It's just like people trying their best. And like I said, I honestly didn't even root for one couple. I just wanted all of them to be okay in the end. So I would say my conclusion is that love triangles aren't necessarily bad, but they just often fall into easy traps. But this love triangle to me just works so well because every connection matters and everyone just wants everyone else to be happy, I guess. So it's not about fighting for love, it's just about like existing together, even if it's complicated. So what's the love triangle that you think was well done or that you thought was really bad? Or like even something that might have been bad, but you still enjoyed it. Like, one of my favorite shows is Vampire Diaries, so I, I don't know. And do you think the Infernal Devices love triangle worked? And if you did have problems with it, please tell me, because I'm so interested to hear different types of opinions on this topic. Because, like I said, I had never really enjoyed this trope until I read this book, so I don't know. I'm just very interested to see. Also, another love triangle that I think a lot of people like is between Asami, Korra, and Mako. I personally still didn't enjoy that one either, even though it was basically a love triangle, because I only liked one of the characters. So I just didn't enjoy the characters, and that's why I didn't love the relationship. But I can understand why people say that this one is also a full triangle. Although we don't get to see a lot of one part of the triangle, just saying. But yeah, that's all I wanted to talk about for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. And like I said, please also tell me your opinions because I'm very interested to know. Bye!